mean that's not his hair? You, that's not a hat. He wears a bandana and his hair is white and it just looks like that. Shut up. Brendan is the name of the male Gen 3 player character, and he happens to coincide with an interesting aesthetic shift in Pokemon's design sensibility. In the original Ruby and Sapphire artwork, he follows the template set by Red and Ethan in the previous generations, with thick covering fabrics making up the bulk of his outfit. It's shifting away from the traveling gear of the first two generations and towards something a little bit more like a tracksuit, but it still has that same late 90s sensibility going on in the costume design there. It's a little more cartoony than fashionable. Protagonists in games like these are usually designed to look cool, but also middle of the road enough that anyone could project themselves into being the one to inhabit the costume. And so, having the costume constitute most of the character design can sometimes be very helpful with that. Brendan does succeed in this, but I've also found his costuming to be some of the least interesting of all of the Pokemon protagonists. Like, he's kind of just wearing a tracksuit. But then comes that aesthetic shift I was talking about. Barely 2 years after Ruby and Sapphire, Emerald comes along, and Brendan gets a redesign to emphasize the green of Emerald in his character design, but also, wow, how things have changed in Pokemon. His costume shifts decisively out of the 90s mode and into a 2000s sporty athleisure style with much less bulk and a much sleeker shape language with more exposed skin and a noticeable shift in the size of his eyes relative to his head. This is Pokemon shifting into a character design aesthetic that would last through most of the DS era, and by the time of the remakes, we can likewise see that the aesthetics of the 3DS era are making themselves known, because here he's even sleeker, even more streamlined, and has more of a focus on volume with a taller and lankier teenage anatomy and even bigger and even more expressive eyes. It's genuinely kind of fascinating to see these shifts in the series' sensibility play out so clearly across a single character design being iterated upon, and it's especially interesting to see the things that don't change. Brendan's hair, apparently his hat is a bright shock of white against his otherwise fairly dark costumes, and where every other part of his costuming shifts radically in shape and pattern over the generations, the hat remains consistent, inarguably the design feature that changes least in 10 years of iteration. And that, Ubisoft, is how you know that a hat is genuinely iconic.